Welcome to a special edition of the Morning Skate. We are talking Texas hockey tonight. It's your host Brownie with fill-in co-host, my boy Fink, all the way
Sorry,
from
Ked.
Dallas. Yeah, sorry, Ked. And we are joined by 20 years with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. You are Mr. Texas, and when it comes to journalism, from what I've seen, Rangers, Mavericks, Cowboys, and the Stars, as well as every major college in Texas. The Engel podcast,
thank you.
adjunct professorships, top sports columnist in Texas 2 times, and 2023 top columnist in the nation by AP Sports Editors. We are honored to be joined with, as it says on the screen, 1995 Hart Trophy finalist, Mac Engel. Mac, welcome to the pod.
It's a pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it when you reached out to me about fell over. So thanks a lot. I was shocked. So thanks a lot for.
It was great.
That was a really nice intro too. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Well, let's jump right into it. The reason we reached out, or I reached out, was in the aftermath of when Jamie Benn lost his mind briefly with the cross check on Stone. You wrote the column saying that Pavelski deserved the C, and I thought it was great. I thought it was it's a hard line to take, obviously, right?
Yeah, it is.
But I understood it from your perspective and from a fan's perspective, and someone who, again, we didn't play at the major league level, any of us, but you were on a team and you got to stand up and answer for your actions, and he did not. So, yeah, let's jump into it.
Quite literally, he did not speak for his actions.
Yeah.
This is a long answer. So I think sometimes media members, we take ourselves too seriously, and I've been guilty of it. Now I'm 49, who cares? I'm more excited about being live than anything else. But I do sometimes think we get so wrapped up in why didn't he talk to us? So I asked a while back. I talked to an NBA player, an old NBA player. He was a reserve player. His name was Maurice Evans. And this was during the Memphis Grizzlies series. Remember when Dylan Brooks was running his mouth and Dylan Brooks was talking crap on LeBron. And then when they lost, he didn't talk to the media.
Right.
This is a pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I think John Morant blew him off too after they lost to the Lakers. And it was a bad look. So I asked Mo Evans, I said, is it really a big deal? Like in a locker room. I know NBA is not NHL. So I asked him, I said, is this really a big deal if they don't talk to the media? And the guy was like, no, not really. And he said, really, he's a young kid. His agent should have stepped in and said, listen, this is what you need to do. But he didn't. And all of it was sound, rational thinking and logical. Like you could understand it from a young person's perspective. But the reality of it is in an NBA locker room, maybe talking to a guy like me is not a big deal. Maybe it's not. In the locker room, which is what matters. And usually one thing I learned later is that the issues that sometimes a person like myself would construe as a big deal is not. It's the stuff that you don't see that tears locker rooms apart. Issues between girlfriends, issues between wives. I remember covering a team one time where wives literally drove that team apart. Stuff like that, stuff that you wouldn't see. Whether or not a guy addresses whether he did what he did on the ice or maybe, in a bar afterwards, whatever else, like to the media, man, that maybe not. But in hockey is different. And sometimes to its own detriment, right? Sometimes hockey culture gets in the way. God, I've heard this for 20 years. I've heard team presidents bitch about this. Hopefully it's okay if I said that.
Oh, say whatever.
Let it fly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've heard team presidents whine about hockey culture forever. That the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back, and they can't promote superstars, and coaches get in the way, and GMs get in the way of promoting individuals, which is one of the biggest ways the NBA got to be as big as it did, is that they promoted superstars and highlights and amazing plays.
Personalities,
personalities, and hockey, it's all about team. And you're like, brother, this is about selling tickets and moving widgets.
Yeah.
And so in the hockey locker room, the C is a big deal. So I remember I was covering the Stars, and I was covering the Stars as a beat writer when they had made Mike Madonna the captain. Darian Hatcher, who was a revered captain, even though he wasn't the most verbal guy, but he was responsible and he was a captain.
Yep.
There was an issue that needed to be taken care of on the ice. he would take care of it.
Yep.
Somebody needed to stand up and say something, he would do it. And that man commanded a lot of respect. So he leaves the Stars and signs as a free agent with the Red Wings. And the Stars are like, well, who can we get the captaincy to? Well, we're going to give it to Mike Modano. I love Mike Modano. Even if you gave me the words to say something bad about Mike Modano, I would say them. I love the guy. He's just decent, kind, humble. He doesn't know how to say no. And unfortunately for Mike, he really wasn't made to wear the C in the traditional sense. But they were like, we have to, right? It's Mike Modano.
Right.
They gave it to him. And it just wasn't his personality. He worn the A forever, but he hadn't worn the C. So they gave it to him. And it clearly wasn't working.
Right.
Was it the reason? Now this is the part that bothered me. Was it the reason why Mike Modano wearing the C? Was that the reason why the Stars had advanced, deep into the playoffs again? No, it wasn't.
Right.
They were looking for a reason. They were looking for something to blame it on, and everybody knew if you were going to give a captaincy in the traditional sense to somebody in that locker room, it wasn't going to be Mike Modano. It was going to be Brendan Morrow,
right?
Classic Western Canadian,
nails,
a guy who would totally, not as talented as Mike in any sense, but man, a worker to the end and a pro. So that Doug Armstrong tells Dave Tippett, hey, go tell Mike Modano we're going to give the C tomorrow. So he does.
Yeah.
And everybody felt bad for Dave. Be like, okay, shit rolls downhill. So he did it. And no one would have made that any easier than Mike, because that's just his personality. So they give Morrow the captain. He wears it for 6 or 7 years. The Stars have a pretty good run. He gets older. And then they gave it to another young Western Canadian and Jamie Benn. And Jamie embodies Brendan Morrow hockey. Tough, heavy game, right? Physical, a pro, guy who will play 83 games out of 82. And just, he's on the Olympic team. I think he scored a goal or two for Team Canada in 14, I think it was. And he's an all-star. He won the scoring trophy in 2013 or 14. And he became the face of the Dallas Stars. Even after they picked up Sagan, even after they drafted Miro Heiskanen, you'd still think Jamie Benn. Well, a couple of years ago, they signed Joe Pavelski. And Joe was in the second part of his career near the end. He wanted to go to a place, it came down to Tampa or Dallas. And he wanted to go to a place where he thought he had a shot on a run. Because that was the one thing that was missing from what will probably be a Hall of Fame career that he built.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I said I would think it would be a Hall of Fame.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, and if not, truly one of the great American hockey players ever. I don't know why he's never in that discussion. It's always Leach and Modano and all these other guys, Chelios. I'm like, this guy needs to be in the conversation. Kachuk. So they give it to him. And in the bubble, they go on this great run in the bubble, right?
Right.
And you remember Pavelski was killing it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. Here's this old guy just redirecting shots in from the moon, and they go in. So I'd covered that team for, 3 or 4 years, and I'd interviewed somebody, and this guy tells me, he says, Mac, the captain of this team is Joe Pavelski. This was a voice I trusted. Nice dog, by the way.
Thank you.
This was a voice I trusted. I would never, ever have gone with the opinion that I went with the other day had Jamie not reacted the way he did. I think anybody can forgive, dude, you lost. What I want to know, and I wish I'd asked, is what did Mark Stone say to you that made you snap like that in that moment? Like, would he call you a name, say your mom was good in bed, or something just totally offensive?
Sure, it's not like Jamie Benn's in his first few years of his career. I'm sure he's heard it,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that
he came out of the Western too. So that's that's not.
Yes. And that was the part that bothered me about it. It's like, this is not some guy who just walked in from juniors.
Yeah.
This guy's been in the league for 13, 14 years, played 1 million games, played 82 games this season, had a great bounce back year, scored 78 points. I mean, everything that we thought about Jamie Benn's career was going to fall off a cliff because he played too heavy for too long, and it was just going to catch up with him. We've seen it 1,000 times.
Right.
He scored 78 points this year. The Stars were on a run. He scores a huge goal in game 2 against Vegas. They lost the game, but it wasn't his fault. And then in that moment, Dallas is already down 1-0 early in game 3. Then he loses his mind. And within 5-8 feet of the official, right, trying to hide it, does a brutal cross check on a guy who's vulnerable in a game now that is called to get that kind of play out of circulation. What was the ref going to do? Yeah, I didn't see it. But you had no choice.
Yeah.
So they gave him misconduct. He ducks the media, right? They give him misconduct. It's a 5-minute power play. Vegas scores again. They go on to win 4-0, which is ridiculous, right? It was a home game in the playoffs, 4-0 in the West Finals. And then he waits till the next day. So now the media is all like, oh, this is awful. This is terrible. And, you know, the coaches can't say anything. Now, they may have groused about it behind closed doors. But, Adam, they didn't say anything. DeBoer's like, I'm not going to pile on to this guy. And he can't.
He gets out of the room at that point, too.
No way, he can't.
And it's his first year as the coach. So what's he
going
to
do? You can't say anything.
Right.
Now, and he said nothing. So then the next day, Jamie Benn comes out and talks about it, and he doesn't own it.
Yeah.
That's the part of like, well, it was unfortunate. I'm like,
yeah, guys shouldn't have been standing there.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you mean it's unfortunate? I mean, what you're basically saying is it's unfortunate they called the penalty on you, and they scored another goal, and your team
They scored 2 on that.
Scored 2. They scored 2. Thank you. So they're already down. Now they're down you. Then they're down Evgeny Dondanov, who was probably who might have been their most efficient, overall their best forward in the playoffs. That's a different issue. And so now you're out with, and it's unfortunate. Like, dude, you put your team in a terrible position.
Right.
If ever there was a moment where, and maybe verbally, and I'm going to give him this because it's insulting and it's not fair. Maybe verbally he doesn't have the vocabulary or the wherewithal to sit there and reach into the pot of words to say, dude, really messed up. I'm sorry. I'm going to make it up. Whatever.
That's all he had to say. He literally could have gone up there and been like, hey, I fucked up. Hand up. That's all you had to do.
That's all you had to do. And said, it's unfortunate. Like you get caught cheating on a test. It's really unfortunate. Which is unfortunate that you did it or they busted you.
It reminded me of the old Seinfeld bit when they would the doctor when they had the pasta and he's like 1,000,001 shot, doc, 1,000,001. I fell. That's what it reminded
Jerry.
me of. Yeah, Fusilli Jerry. That's what it reminded me of.
So when I wrote it, I'm like, you've got a captain in your locker room. It ain't this guy. You can't act that way. Now, are they going to do it?
No.
Never. What Joe Pavelski wants. Dude's like 38 years old.
Yeah.
He's done everything but win a cup. Everything. He's like, don't waste my time with this crap. Let him have it. Who cares? We'll move on. But in that moment, that is everything that your captain cannot do. And he did it.
Yeah.
And that's why, and I don't know if you guys, I think you probably saw it. So earlier this season, Dallas Stars owner Tom Ghilardi was on the radio.
Up in Vancouver. Yep.
Okay, you saw it. And he inferred, a lot of my colleagues took it the wrong way, that basically the Dallas-Fort Worth media, who am I kidding? It's mostly Dallas, are soft on the Stars. And they don't get the kind of pressure in the media externally that some other clubs do, like Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Detroit, Boston, Rangers, Islanders, that beltway, right?
Right.
And they don't. The Cowboys do. Cowboys will get crucified if they screw up a punt.
Yep.
But if the Stars, that fan base is so loyal, and it's decent size. It's amazing what they've done here. But that's a very nice fan base. And the media does what I'm not going to criticize the media. I'm not. But I think I understood his point. I talked to a couple former players about it. And their point was, look, sometimes you need, as a player and a coach, external pressure, like they get in Toronto and those places, because the coach can't say it all. And if the player feels like, I can't even go out and get a beer or have a cheeseburger at a bar because I'm going to hear about how bad we've been the last 4 nights, you don't have any of those concern in this market.
Yeah.
None.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think it's one of the trade-offs that the players in Sunbelt markets, Dallas, Nashville, Atlanta doesn't have that problem. Arizona doesn't have that problem. They enjoy that here. They enjoy the wealth. They get to play the sports, get the pretty blondes, and all that other stuff. And they don't have the pressure. And
I think that's why the owner, the Dallas owner specifically, it comes to mind with the way he skewers Ben and Sagan over the years. You think that's why? Is that part of it?
I think he's a fan. I do think. I don't want to say he's George Steinbrenner or anything like that. And I don't know if there's an equivalent. I'm sorry, guys. I've got this bad shadow. I'm trying to get it out.
No, you're good. It's sunny in Texas. I know that.
No, it is. But I got these shades and I see it splitting. No, I think he's a fan. I like the guy a lot. He's a nice guy. But he's, he owned a junior team.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's buying a junior hockey? You don't buy a junior hockey team unless you love hockey.
Yeah.
The guy loves hockey. He's a Vancouver resident. He's got a place in Dallas. And I think he's a fan. And I know some of the, some of my colleagues in the media here in Dallas-Fort Worth, and I think who I'm probably talking about, they defended Ben and Sagan against those comments. Yeah. And when I saw those comments, I'm like, he's not wrong. You're paying Sagan $9.85. You're paying Ben, who had a great bounce back here, $8.5.
9.5.
Is it 9.5?
9.5 for 2 more years. Yeah.
Okay, so you're on the hook. That term that Doug Armstrong talked about however many years ago. It's eating teams alive.
Yeah,
because you're giving them in the prime of their years, prime windows of their career, and you can just pray that maybe they can hang on to it. When we have seen over the years, when hockey players, most of them, not all of them, most of them. I mean, Pavelski's an exception. You can see some defensemen that are an exception. That there's. Yeah, most of them, they just lose it because they started at 20 or 21 and they lose it. And so that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And so when he talked about it, any rational observer would be like, yeah, he's right. He's right.
Yeah.
And I think so you needed some external pressure, and the fact that it had to come from the owner, it's just what it is.
I think that kind of speaks
forever.
No, you're fine. I think that really does.
We don't get this kind of insight from us morons, so it's good.
Yeah. And I do think it speaks to the Dallas market because you do look. This is not the first time Ghilardi's made comments, much like he made with the emojis of we'll say a galloping horse and a pile of poop, which is what he referred to both Tyler Sagan and Jamie Benn playing as a couple years back. The media was not.
Was he wrong?
No, and that was when they were at a very, very low point. Now, granted, Sagan did have a lot of injury issues. They basically had to reattach his leg for all intents and purposes, but you still weren't producing up to that point like we expected you to. Jamie Benn, there was no excuse. Did he win the Art Ross Trophy? Yeah, he won it with 87 points. Connor McDavid said, "That's me in 6 months. Like I don't like whatever." But you look back at the way that this city looks at the Stars, and they really aren't hard on them. You look at when the Rangers were on the cusp of winning the World Series, and Nelson Cruz, we'll never forget it here in Dallas or Fort Worth, didn't make the catch. We eventually lose that series. We lost again to the Giants, and they completely fell off. And everyone said, well, back to obscurity the Rangers go. We knew that this is what the team was going to be like. The Cowboys, like you said, the Cowboys could sneeze wrong, and Dak Prescott would hear about it. Oh, did you guys see Dak sneeze? His neck is gone. He can't throw the ball anymore. And I think you remember, was it Randy Galloway called it Overreaction Monday? Yes. It was on 103.3 ESPN radio here in Dallas. Rest in peace. But he would come on every Monday, and if the Cowboys had won, play the music. We're going to the Super Bowl. We could be 1-15 at the time. We won a game that we're on the up and up. The Stars just don't have that pressure here, and I don't. And I think
it's one of the trade-offs. I was writing about this when the Final Four, the NHL's Final Four was set. You have Vegas, Carolina, Florida, Dallas. I mean, I don't think any of these markets, those Final Four markets, function any differently. I remember I used to go down to when I used to cover the Stars. As a beat writer, they had games in Florida, which is in Sunrise, which is I don't know 30 minutes away from. Yeah. So it's in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It's literally it's basically by a couple of outlet malls.
Mm-hmm.
And I
can make an argument that Florida is an outlet mall.
Yes, that's true. Right. No, you're right. And I mean that fan base. One of the real challenges, and I can't speak to it in Boston, but I take that back. I vividly remember covering this story could be a podcast. I can't tell it, But I vividly remember covering a game in Boston.
Oh, I know
And you
which game.
just-
I bet.
No, this was 100
Oh, I
years
thought,
ago.
I thought the Steve Ott, Sean Avery game. You were gonna
no.
talk
I
that
remember
was
that one. No,
that
I
was a
remember
fun
that one.
game.
No, it was like, but I mean, this is back when, you had a goalie who played 60 some games. This was way before,
Oh,
we
Jake
started
Ottinger?
yeah, right. No, but this was back when you had a definite 1A goal,
Right.
not 1A and 1B, and you just went with the hot hand and stuff like that. But I just remember the intensity in Boston for a Tuesday night game. It felt considerably hotter and higher than it did in Carolina on January. Probably was the same road trip.
Yeah.
And that's just the market. And it takes, but if you had told me, I think if you had told the NHL back in 1992 when Dallas came back, when the North Stars came down here and Anaheim started a team and all this dramatic expansion and league relocation started to happen, that they would have stable franchises in Dallas, Anaheim, Carolina, Tampa, Miami, Nashville, and San Jose. That's 8 teams, 7 teams. And and Colorado, Denver. So there's 8 teams and you can't, the Arizona thing is a disaster. Atlanta didn't work again. So those are busts. But if you had said that and you're going to have a Final Four of those teams, they would say, oh, that's my daughter. Wave, honey. Yes, that's my daughter. What are you getting out of here?
Sports.
Oh, no, the iPad. Thank you.
I've seen her. We saw the video
there's
of her
your
reading
priority.
tweets. She did a good job.
But if you had said that, you were like, that's great success. But the trade-off is that these markets, even though they're working and they fill up 15, 17,000 seat buildings and all that other stuff, they don't come with nearly the wattage of a Chicago, of a Minnesota, because we just can't play it. Basically, only rich people can play hockey down there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the same in Boston or not.
Well, Boston's it's tough as an original 6. It's a little different. We were talking about it before you came on, me and Fang. This just popped into my head when you mentioned Arizona. So one of the cities that's talked about moving to, if they move, is Houston. And Fink, you and I have talked about this. Yep. Do you think having a team in Houston would ramp up the spotlight on the Stars players?
Maybe marginally.
Okay.
I think it's just such a. Like I did a book. I'm going to plug my book. I did
4
a book.
books. Don't let them humble brag there.
That's true. No, I did one a couple of years ago where I spent 4 days.
That sounded like awesome road
trip. It was neat. It was great.
Yeah.
And so I went to Houston on Thursday. I covered a Texans Thursday night game, and then I went out to where Friday Night Lights was the next day, which is Midland, Odessa. I had to fly there. That's West Texas. And I drove through the night, and I did the Texas-Oklahoma game in Dallas on Saturday, and then on Sunday I did the Cowboys game against the Patriots, actually, coincidentally. And I don't think I really realized just how much the sport of football is ingrained in our everyday culture starting August 1 here. And it dictates marriage, weddings, it dictates weekends. It's just such an enormous part of the culture here. And the closest analogy I grew up in Indiana, was basketball when I was a kid.
Oh, like Hoosiers,
Yeah, it was, and on a much smaller scale because the state's obviously a lot smaller. So as big as hockey has gotten here, and you've got pros coming out here now, coming out of the state. But in terms of ramping up the pressure, a little bit. I mean, it's all about growth, and I think what we've seen consistently over the years is that there is growth in sports, and specifically the NHL. I'll never forget this. I had an opportunity to interview Gary Bettman in his office. This was in like 2004 during the lockout. So he was in full spin control.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, we compare ourselves with ourselves. And as long as you do that, you would say the National Hockey League has done pretty good the last 20 years. And you'd be right. You'd be right. Now, if you said, well, this is what the NFL is doing, you're like, oh, my God, this is a disaster. You guys were a joke. You lost 82 games. You had to flush a season. You had to flush a third of another season. You've got one franchise relocating from Atlanta back to Canada. You've got another team that's all but dead in Arizona that's going to be moving soon. So you would say
Muni rink. Yeah,
and that's embarrassing.
Yeah,
you're
a
major league sport, and you're playing in a 5,000 seat arena. That's humiliating.
Yeah.
So if
you're borrowing from a college,
yes,
it's even more insulting.
It's awful. So if they went to Houston, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Kansas City, because when you look at where the NHL's gone, they went to San Jose, they went to Nashville before anybody else was there. They own those markets.
Vegas.
Great. Oh, smartest thing the league ever did.
Yeah.
And because I remember that the talk was this, what they wanted to do was, I've never told this story because I had a GM tell me this. What they wanted to do was get a franchise in Vegas. They wanted Pittsburgh to fail, go to Vegas, draft Sidney Crosby #1, and have him in Vegas. That was the sort of, but the timing of it didn't quite work, and instead Pittsburgh got him, and he saved the franchise.
Yeah,
which I think is probably better for the league and certainly the city of Pittsburgh.
Absolutely, and it's such a shame how poorly Vegas has done since they've come into the league. They've just struggled so mightily every single season, seemingly.
Well, and that's another thing. Like I'm kind of curious to pick your brains about this, because one thing the NHL did, and I thought it was a great idea, was they rethought the way an expansion team could be built, and instead, because what they wanted to do was, a league executive told me this: if we're going to put a team in Vegas or put a team in Seattle, we've got to give them a chance immediately. We can't have 10 years of 10 straight losing seasons like they did in Columbus and Minnesota and wherever else. Like the Columbus one was a fiasco.
Yeah,
they've been so bad. And by them changing it, they can sell some tickets, and they built a fan base in Seattle and in Las Vegas probably for a long time. Now, you guys are fans of different franchises. Do you like the way they did that?
100%. I do personally.
I do, because if you were to remove me from this platform and say, hey, there's a basketball team that's owned by Michael Jordan, and there's a hockey team in the middle of the desert in Vegas, which one do you think is doing better? I'd say, obviously, the basketball team owned by one of the greatest, if not the greatest, basketball player of all time. And you tell me I was wrong. I'd be like, I just don't see how. And you look at the Charlotte Bobcats and just how poorly they played as an expansion team. It's not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah.
I think the Hornets have made the playoffs one time since Jordan bought them, and I think they've had one winning record.
Yeah. How crazy is that?
Because he was a phenomenal player doesn't mean we've seen the thousands times. Like I remember, and I'm like, you're a Larry Bird guy. I grew up in Larry Bird country. So when Larry Bird came back to Indiana, and he led the Pacers to the finals, and then he left because he knew, okay, I'm only as good as my best players. This team's getting ready to get old. I'm done. Yeah. And so, like, just because Jordan has a lot of money and nobody wants, listen to what Charles Barkley said about Jordan. He nailed him.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, to my mind, I'm an 80s kid. It doesn't change my view of Michael Jordan as a player. Right. It just means he's a crappy talent evaluator.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I do want to kind of bring it back to the Stars a little bit.
Guys, I know I said my daughter has my iPad. If you want to keep going with this, all right. We don't have to cut this off.
Fink has he's the Stars guy. I am Bruins, but I watch everything. But Fink dialed it down for you.
Yeah, Brownie will humble me when it's necessary. So no, I've followed you, Mac, for a long time. So this is just a super cool experience for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool to kind of sit here and talk with you. But I do want to kind of dive into, obviously, the main focus for a lot of Stars fans right after is you look at the unrestricted free agents versus the restricted free agent, which is just Tyler Dellandrea. I think the Stars are going to go out, probably get him back. I think he's a very tenacious player. He's unfortunately reminded me of Jamie Benn at times, taking some pretty stupid penalties. I think there were a lot of glaring penalties in this playoff run that kind of fell on Dellandrea, but the penalty kill, obviously.
2-in-1 shift, and he pretty much.
Yeah. But then you looked at the unrestricted free agents, and I think you kind of see the writing on the wall. Evgeny Dadonov, Max Domi, Glenn Denning, Kiviranta, Frederick Olofsson, and Joel Hanley. I personally see them going after, the guys like Hanley, Glenn Denning, maybe. He is on the cusp of where, you do have a lot of young guys waiting in the wings, but from your vantage point, who do you see the Stars kind of making an effort to go for? Do they surprise us and maybe go for a Max Domi and let those other guys go and kind of recoup the loss?
Kiviranta was one of the great finds of all time, right?
Right.
And they got him for nothing. Yuri Lettinen liked him, and they gave him a shot.
Yep.
And then he has a hat trick in the West Finals in the bubble. Is that what it was?
Yeah, Colorado Avalanche, and then puts us into the Stanley Cup Finals. Yep.
He can skate, man, too.
he's a nice player. Is he a
Yeah.
top 6 player? He might be a top 6 player. Like I'm talking over 82 games.
Yeah.
And because players can find. Look, Dallas Andrews scored 2 goals in the third period in game
Yeah.
5.
First multi-goal game for him of his career.
Of his career.
Yeah.
Of his entire career.
Yep. And that's the playoffs for you. You're right. You crash and there's a rebound or there's a screen and you're in the right place in the right time and you whack it in, all of a sudden, look how great you look. But he had to be there in the first place to do it.
Right.
And you've got to have the want to and the willingness to get hit. Young players will do that. Older players, I don't know. That's what makes Joe Pavelski so good. I mean, Joe Pavelski blows me away. I call him Tom Brady on skates. So India, it's all about number. What's he worth?
Yeah.
I'm TV Rantra, and I can get money someplace else. Bye.
Yeah.
I go. The one I'm biased, and I'll say this: I'm biased about this guy. I'm biased because, and this happens every blue moon. I got a chance to meet this guy when he was a rookie, and he talked to my nephew as an ice hockey player, and he's a diabetic, just like Max Domi is.
Yeah.
And Max spent 10, 15 minutes talking to him. That was my nephew. And, that meant so much to me. And he's not as good as his dad, right?
He's
a different guy.
Yeah. And there's not a room for his dad anymore.
No, 100%. That's a great point. His dad wouldn't even be in the league now.
Right.
Yeah.
There's that whole strata of players, genre of players that a GM be like, dude, no.
Yeah.
I don't. Your roster spot's too valuable for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I would sign. There's Max Domi is right on. Is that guy who? There's a line, and he's just underneath in terms of pushing that line and what hockey still is about and allows.
Right.
And I don't know who else. Ben will do it. I still think you need that.
Yeah, you do 100%. I think they got pushed around in that Vegas series, and I think we saw that a lot. Same 100%. Thing in the Minnesota series. I think let's face facts. All playoffs long, they trailed in hits, and this is the stat, Brownie. I think I brought it up, and this guy has frustrated me almost as much as Ryan Suter is Yanni Hakanpää. When we brought him to this team, he was 3rd in the league in hits. He hasn't even cracked the top 25. I don't think he's cracked the top 50 since he's been in Dallas. And I get it. Different philosophies, different play styles for different people, different coaches. But if you're a top 5 hitting defenseman in the league, I expect you to hit people. You're 6'7". You're a giant man. And his physicality has just completely vanished when he came to the Dallas Stars.
And the thing that it was, Dallas is really fast, right? Mm-hmm. Jason Robertson is fast. I mean, that is a dynamic player.
Well, that's your article. You mentioned this. You were like, this is a direct quote. You were like, Dallas is a big team, but they're not the biggest. They're a fast team, but they're not the fastest. And I feel like, and I'm sorry I cut you off, but it's like they're just shy of where that line that you talk about.
And I don't know. So you talk about the guys that are free agents. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're going to bring a couple of them back, and a few of them, if you're their agent and you can get 3 or 4 years someplace else, you got to go. You got to go. I like Kiwi Rantra a lot because I'm one of these guys. I fell in love with. This is an obnoxious name drop, but I'll never forget covering Bill. I learned a lot when I covered about pro sports and just people from covering Bill Parcells when he was the head coach of the Cowboys.
Right.
And he had signed this guy. Actually, he was a Bostonian, a BC kid named Mark Colombo. And Mark had been a first-round pick, but he had destroyed his knees in Chicago, his right knee. And so Bill signed him. It's kind of like a future. It's like, we're just going to take a flyer on this guy and get him healthy and see what happened. And I remember I asked him, he said, well, because Al Davis had taught him this line. I can't believe I remember this. He said, if somebody else you trust likes him, then you need to look at him. And, if Yuri Letnin, who's one of the best professionals I ever had a chance to cover, and just the heart, God, if his hands had just been a little bit better, we're talking about a 50-goal scorer. But he just didn't have the hands for it. He had the grit for it, and he could skate. He just didn't have the hands. Yuri Letnin liked that guy. And if Yuri Letnin likes that guy, I'm like, huh, okay, I'm probably going to like that guy. Doesn't mean he's going to score 30 goals or whatever. I don't know what his productivity was. But I like the problem is all these different guys that you just mentioned, they're nice players.
Yeah.
The challenge to me the Hakanpää thing, I didn't realize the hit differential was that stark. That's awful. Like you just come here and now all of a sudden the thing that made you a good NHL player, you don't even do it anymore.
Yeah.
Then why did we bring you here?
Exactly.
Change the game when you didn't need to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like you're running around getting dumb penalties or you're just trying to run guys because you have a temper and you're an idiot and you're trying to get into fights. That's not him. But if your game is an edge, and we knew that when we evaluated you, doing it here, then we're doing something wrong on our end. And I think when I looked at this team, they scored a lot. The goaltending is pretty good. I think some of us who watched the Stars probably fell a little too much in love with Jake Ottinger for his performance against Calgary last year.
Right.
And he was amazing. But there's one series.
Played too. There's that stat. We talked about it a few weeks ago.
I was gonna
allude to that. You get over 60 and goaltender stats just go off a cliff. And it's at this point, I don't understand how any NHL team doesn't realize that when we realize it. You know what I mean? It's like if we realize that, then the guys who do this for a living should realize it. And I know Wedgwood was hurt, but
no, you think you bring up a really good point. I think one of the challenges for all these coaches, GMs too, is you know that stat, right? And you can always rationalize your way around any statistic. But at the end of it, if you really need that game, you're like, damn it, we're going with this guy. I know what the numbers say. I trust this guy. I like this guy, but I trust this guy.
Yeah.
So we're going with this guy. I don't know if he said it or not, but I'm convinced Jake, he kind of referenced it. I'm convinced Jake Ottinger was playing with some kind of injury in that series. I don't know what. And Pete DeBoer kindly, loosely referenced it after Game 6, and they were still going to lose. You lose 6-0, you got your ass kicked.
Oh, absolutely.
But to me, you mentioned all those names. I like Domi. I like all those guys you mentioned. You don't dislike any of them.
No, not at all.
But the issue is like you're paying $9.5 million to a third line center.
Yeah,
you're paying. You will be lucky if Jamie Benn gets 78 points again. Lucky.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be lucky if he can replicate the season he had this year.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what he did. And if he does that again, great. Hats off to him.
Yeah.
And because then I think you sign a guy to 8 years or whatever, and you got 6 good years out of him. Okay, you won that deal.
Yeah.
I think you got your bang for your buck. To me, the issue is defense. I don't know what you do with Ryan Suter. I mean, guys,
I'm glad you brought that up.
What do you do? I mean, you can't. I don't think teams are allowed to shoot their players. I don't think that's allowed yet.
Well, Texas.
You never know.
Yeah, things are different.
Right. Don't rule that out.
So numbers wise,
I felt bad for him.
I mean,
to a degree, -28.
Yeah.
Oh, he's terrible. He is by far the worst player on the team statistically. But I'm glad. I'm glad you alluded to it and brought that up because I do a podcast on my own down here. We cover nothing but North Texas hockey, and we talked about. I brought up the numbers yesterday. You get $2.8 million in cap space back if you buy him out now for the next 2 years. And then you get a $700,000, I believe, cap relief the years following to pay him back. You know, that all goes to the wash, whatever. But it's really not that hard of a buyout. I mean, if you're already giving $9.5 million to a guy like Jamie Benn, who still has 2 more years, you're giving $4.5 million to Mason Marchment, who had a great first 10, 15 games and then just completely disappeared.
Vanished.
Completely disappeared. I mean, he was leading the Stars in points and goals for, I think, the first 10 games, 15 games through the season, and everyone was like, this is a great signing. You're giving a guy like him $4.5 million. What's 2.8 to get rid of arguably the worst defender on your team? And that's saying something.
I think he made a play. I want to say it was in game
Was it the one where they cost the goal? Because that was game 2, I believe, in overtime, where he blatantly just stopped playing defense.
Yeah, that one. It was that one was like, at least that. Oh God, that one was.
That was really
That to me shifted the momentum completely in the favor, and that was Vegas' series.
I totally agree. If they win, they should have won game. That series should have been 2-2. Dallas should have lost the series. Vegas was better, but that series should have been 2-2 after 4 games.
Agreed.
And they gave up game 2, and Suter had that total brain fart in overtime. You're like, what are you doing? And then I think it was in game 5. It was in Vegas, and whoever, I can't remember the Vegas forward, is coming at him towards the top of the crease, and
he goes the other way.
He goes away from the puck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
He's anticipating a pass, and I think it was Marchessault, and Marchessault took the shot, top shelf, buried it, instantly look at Suter.
And because it was Suter skated away from, and you could tell there was a breakdown in communication between him and Miro Heiskanen.
Yeah.
And I don't care. That is fundamental 2-year-old sports. Stop the ball, stop the puck.
Yeah.
And he skated, and he wasn't like at the blue line. He wasn't at the red line. He was 5 feet in front of your goalie.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, dude, I'm good. Give it a shot. Oh, you scored. I'll be damned. Let me go get you the stuffed animal from up here. Good shot, son. I'm like, what I would love to know is, and I'll never know it, is what his teammates thought of him in that moment, because everybody stands up for everybody. Oh, it's a great guy. He's a wonderful teammate. No one cares hard and all that bullshit. I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? We've got no margin for error out here.
Right.
You're out here screwing off, running away from the puck. If you hate that much, go to your couch.
Yeah,
it was like a cornerback jumping the route.
Like your dog could have played better.
Yeah, and here's the fascinating thing to me is you go back, and this is from like a fan standpoint. So let's remove the fact that he's just an atrocious defender, regardless of age. He is disliked everywhere he has played. He goes to Nashville, he still gets booed. He goes to Minnesota, he gets booed.
Well, but hang on. It's one thing if fans sit there and it's like, oh, I hate this guy.
It's usually the money attached too, is what gets the
fans. And that's a big, that's a huge part of it. Right. I hate that when teams like money's not important. Fuck you. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's not important. Then why are you sitting there haggling at contract time? Because it's everything.
Yeah.
It's not important. That's a lie. It's important to everybody. Now, but what I want to know is, what do his teammates think about him?
They don't like him.
Okay, there you
go. When he was in Nashville, he made it fit because he was taken off the top power play unit and made a complete mess of the locker room because he was so upset that he was taken off. And then he goes to Minnesota. He gets a boatload of money. He underperforms. I don't know any stories out of Minnesota. I've got some friends that ride up there. I guarantee you I can pull a story out of them where they say, yeah, he was a veteran, but he didn't act like it.
Okay, so you get rid of him.
Yeah.
And to me, in my mind, the biggest issue for the Stars, they obviously have issues on their bottom 2 lines.
Right.
They do. I mean, every in a salary cap area, you're going to have holes. NFL teams go through it. NBA,
absolutely.
But to me, what I look at is, okay, what are they going to do on defense? They have Nick Lidstrom right now in Miro Heiskanen. Guy's amazing. He's awesome. I love him. Signed to a 50-year deal. He could play 35 minutes a night. He's great. Yeah. Okay. After that, I see some pretty good, but they need help. And
100%.
To me, that's where this team is either going to make a jump. Because I swear to God, when I saw Pietrangelo was with Vegas, I'm like, he's going to kill them.
Yeah.
Because he murdered them when he was with the Blues. And it was the same damn thing. I'm like, there's nobody on that. It's the not quite big enough. And if Hakanpää is that big, right? You've got an elephant on skates, and then you tell that elephant, sit tight.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's an issue there. And I believe in Jim Nill. I think he's a good man. He's a good general manager. They've built a really good core here. They're going to be relevant, but they are right. When you look, Dallas lost where they should have lost in terms of where they finished in the playoffs. No different than the Cowboys. Cowboys had a great regular season. They lost where they should have lost in the divisional round.
Yeah.
They weren't better than the 49ers again. And I think when you looked at, if you matched up and you played that series out against Vegas, you're like, no, the better team won. Could Dallas force game 7? Yeah, they could have.
Yeah.
But they weren't better than Vegas. how do you get better than Vegas? How do you get better than create some separation from Seattle, whomever else? You've got to go get one, and I don't know how you do it.
The only way I see it working out, and this is just from very intense 10-second research that I've done while we were having this conversation. Obviously, you have Nils Lundqvist waiting in the wings, quite literally all postseason long. He was a scratch. We gave up a first and second rounder, sent them to the Rangers for Nils Lundqvist, who did not want to be with that team anymore because he was not getting any playing time. Guess what?
And they played Ryan Suter in front of him.
Right. Exactly. I do see
there's something there they don't like about Nils Lundqvist.
I tend to disagree just because Jim Nill is going to come out and say the Jim Nill thing. We like where this team's at. He said, I like where Nils has come as far as when he's been with the Stars. I think you slot him in on the second or third line defense along with maybe an Esa Lindell. We'll see how that goes. But a name that just kind of popped up to me that's going to be an unrestricted free agent, he's probably going to garner a lot more money than he's making right now, is a guy like Rocco Gudas. Gudas has had a transformation since he's come out of the Capitals, and he's played well. The way he plays with Florida is exactly how you need someone to play for the Dallas Stars. Is he a first? I'd say second line. He's a second. I mean, we're going to have to see. Someone's going to have to emerge to play with Miro Heiskanen, but we can't have another example of Ryan Suter playing with Miro Heiskanen and Ryan Suter making that play of, I rely so heavily on Heiskanen that I'm not going to cover the puck because it's Miro Heiskanen. He's got this. I don't need to. I think that's where Ryan Suter is mentally. I can't keep up with this kid, but he's good enough to where I don't have to play elite defense anymore. And unfortunately, and then in that game, he got moved down to the third line with, I believe,
moved off the ice.
Yeah, 100%. That's what everyone in Dallas is saying. So I think that you can recoup your losses if you get that 2.8. If you do happen to buy out Ryan Suter, which would be hilarious to get bought out twice in your career, and you go to a guy like a Rocco Gudas or someone that's going to be a hard-hitting defenseman that you really just don't have right now, because I don't think teams look at the Dallas Stars.
No. Do you think they want a hard-hitting defenseman?
I don't know, and that's what kind of scares me. If I'm Ghilardi, I guarantee you Ghilardi's going to Jim and saying, "Hey, I'm sick of getting pushed around. I'm sick of watching the team that I own get pushed around. We need to make some, even if it's Ryan Reeves of all people, who's not going to produce anything, but he's a great lock."
Would you want Ryan Reeves on your roster?
If he's a bottom
to the Bruins, unfortunately.
Oh, never mind. You guys can have him.
He's been linked to the Bruins, unfortunately, this offseason.
I wouldn't want him.
No.
Because he can't. What can he do?
I mean, at this point, just hit people.
We're okay.
Just hit people. I mean,
you've got that guy on your roster now. If you're Dallas and you've asked him, don't hit anybody.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a finish thing. I can't explain it.
The Pete DeBoer thing, though, with his coaching style, he's always had that top level, smooth skating Niedermayer-esque defenseman.
Yeah.
Right. Everywhere he's gone, he's had at least one. So maybe that's where the no hitting comes from. They want them to just quick transitions, get the puck up and out for outlets, and it's not the bang the forwards in the corners anymore.
I'll be really interested to see, because I think the one thing Dallas has done consistently since Jim came here from Detroit, they've made a splash acquisition, I think, every summer.
Yeah.
Now, they haven't always worked, right?
Right.
But trading for Sagan, that worked.
Right.
There have been other ones. I'm gonna blank on it. The old center that they got from the Senators, blanking on his name.
Spezza.
Jason didn't have it anymore. He's a good pro, but just wasn't there.
Patrick Sharp being one of them, Jonathan Oduya, guys like that. Yeah.
He went out and tried. He tried. The Heiskanen thing was a massive win. Drafting Val Nichushkin as high as he did in the first round. I loved that trade, that drafting, because they did it with the idea of, if you draft him, we are only leaving Russia to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. Now, it's worked for him, well, kind of, I guess, until whatever happened in Colorado. But he was really developing into the player in Colorado that he should have here. But that happens sometimes. And it wasn't like they didn't try. He just wasn't mature enough. It wasn't right. So I think if you looked at what Jim has done, he has not been afraid The owner has empowered him to spend money. So his history says he'll do something. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but he'll do something I don't think he's just going to stand pat. I don't think he's going to be afraid to screw up. I think his wife has been through a lot, health scares. I think that changes your perspective. Age changes your perspective. Your bank account changes your perspective. All of these things give you security to know that I can go out and do this. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it wouldn't surprise me whether it's any of these guys that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think he'll do something. They're not going to just sit still.
Yeah. And let's not forget that he was just put on a 1-year extension himself. So he's on a contract year, just like anybody else with the 1-year extension. So I think he's going to do a little bit more. And I'm glad you kind of brought him up again, because I do want to kind of shift gears a little bit and look a little bit ahead to the future, because I think the future is more bright than Stars fans kind of realize. Now, it's very easy to say 2017 worked out pretty well for us. Jake Ottinger, Jason Robertson, Miro Heiskanen, not a bad draft. Now you kind of fast forward. I had a chance to talk to this guy, and this is kind of an example of like a Max Domi, spending time.
This is driving me crazy.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's like you're in a solarium.
Yeah.
It's just driving. I feel
There you go.
But kind of alluding to this is you're fine. This is a guy who kind of strikes me the same way. I had an opportunity to interview this. I can say kid because he was 19 at the time. I believe he just turned 20. But Logan Stankoven.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's a top 5 scorer in the WHL, and he has an opportunity, likely the biggest one of all the Stars prospects, to crack that main roster next season. In your opinion, if you have any knowledge of the prospect pool outside of Stankoven, is there anyone on the cusp that makes the jump next year?
I'd be swimming in the deep end of the pool, and I'd be speaking out of turn if I said I knew the ones that I knew and I'm going to make excuses. One of the challenges that I'm in is that I'm trying to keep track of like 4 other teams,
right?
And TCU as well. I mean, they had that amazing run,
right?
The one name and so when they draft guys, those are the ones I kind of keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
So when Wyatt Johnston did his thing, I mean, that's the one I kind of kept my eye on. And that's one thing, you talk about why I would be surprised. I don't know why a Stars fan would sit there and not think that their future is pretty bright. And because you have to constantly put it in the context of a bright future in this current stage and era of the NHL means you finish in the top 5 and you just hope for the best in the playoffs. Yeah. Did anybody see this coming from Florida this year?
No, not a single person. I don't even think they saw it.
In hindsight, you had, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but in hindsight, you had a President's Cup trophy winning team, right? Who then got Ekblad back, who's a top 4 defenseman, and then added Matthew Tkachuk, who is very different player than Huberdeau. And as great as Mackenzie Weegar's doing over in the Worlds, he's not Ekblad. So you shouldn't have been surprised. I mean, the Bobrovsky thing obviously is.
I think that's the biggest surprise.
That's the biggest surprise there.
And there's the other thing. I think that the goalie thing has changed. When I was covering the league was a goalie league, right? Mm-hmm. We saw 1.98 GAAs or 2.12, and it was that one guy, and it was the celebrity goalie, it was Brodeur, and it was Hasek, and all these other guys that just third game was over. Put in that left wing lock and just dump and chase until the clock ran out. And it wasn't exciting. And now the league is just on this rotation of goalies, like you mentioned, Bobrovsky. I mean, you're just running these guys through a cycle, and maybe they get hot and it works.
Yeah.
And the thing with that, I mean, you're right. Nobody saw that coming with what he's doing with Florida. And I think the thing in Florida, because you're right, Florida has been in a good run, but the hope is that you can kind of do what maybe Tampa did, because that run was amazing. I mean, not nearly enough people give Tampa enough credit for the extended run that they have, or Chicago, Pittsburgh, Washington to an extent. God, even the run Vegas is on right now, which is unfair because it's an expansion team. I don't see anything that says to me, Dallas, Dallas been to the West, went to the Stanley Cup final in 2000, 2023. They get to the West Finals. That's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
And if they can extend this out for another, the thing I think you get worried about is that Pavelski's 38, Ben's 33, Seguin is a third line player. And like, okay, where else is the production going to come from? Well, Hintz looks great. Wyatt Johnson looks great. Jason Robinson's an all-star. I wouldn't be surprised if he cracks 50 goals. Heiskanen's a monster. Ottinger looks very, very good. I think we got a little ahead of ourselves over our skis on some of this. They just need like 2 more guys. And that's easy to say. It's not like you go into a gumball machine. Right. Hey, just give me the cherry flavored. But I got to tell you, and you know the prospects way, way better than I do. But if you look at what they got and what they just did and what they've done now from 2020 to today, you should feel pretty good about this.
Yeah.
Not like the sky's falling. No, you're in a good run. So you better appreciate it now, because Stars fans from 2000, let's just say 8, right? When they lost the West Final, got their ass kicked by Detroit in that game 6. 2008, really to about 2020, those were dark times.
Absolutely.
And teams in bankruptcy, they had a bunch of crappy drafts. They missed on a bunch of guys. They sold themselves. Alex Goligoski and all these, Trevor Daley, nice players, but not frontline players.
Right.
They've got frontline guys now.
Yeah.
You should feel good about where you are. Even if you don't win the cup, and I know it's just a crapshoot, and you hope one of them's in there, I do. But you should feel pretty good about the management, about the owner, the coaches, that's coming.
Like you said, diapers.
It is a diaper. And I like DeBoer, but I'm not going to sit here and say, he's terrible, he's trash. I'm like, good God, they're all the same.
Yeah.
And so, but I would think for the most part, you should feel pretty good about where you are.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Stan Coven's going to crack the team next year. I think we are in a very, very unique situation of where you've got the former cornerstones of your franchise still on the team, and you've got your cornerstones of the future of the franchise on the team at the same time. There is a legitimate passing of the torch happening. I think a little bit faster than I think both Ben and Seguin really anticipated. And maybe that's why Ben played so well, because he's like, oh shit, these kids are way better than me. I could lose the C next year. Who knows? We don't know. We'll see what happens. But
of all the guys that I mentioned, I want both of you to answer it. Of all the guys that I mentioned who had Pavelski's 38, this guy's awesome. Seguin, third line center. I think he had 50-some points in the regular season, but he did come back from that torn Achilles that had in the playoffs from a couple of years ago, several years ago. And Ben scored 78 points in 82 games, played 82 games. Of all those things, which one of those 3 that you would look at and say, that guy is, like, in descending order, done?
I would say Pavelski is a freak of nature, so he's at the bottom of the list. I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if he plays till he's 41. I think he's 38 right now. Yep. He could easily, the way that he conditions himself, the way he plays the game,
he plays work he puts in,
the extra work, the fact that he's willing to risk his body, especially after that hit from Dumba. I mean, I don't think anyone saw that and went, he's going to be back and make a huge difference and score 4 goals in 1 game in the next series. I don't think anyone saw that. They thought, God, I hope he's able to remember his name.
Where he is,
yeah.
Okay, so you've got Pavelski third,
but then I gotta say Ben second and Seguin first, because Seguin just he cannot play the type of game that made him famous anymore. And I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know if he is of the mindset to where he can go into the offseason and say, I'm going to completely revamp the way I play because I can no longer keep up with the style of play that I used to play. Ben's a tank. There's nothing going on upstairs, but Jamie Benn goes, I'm Jamie Benn. I hit people hard. Sometimes I score a goal. I score a goal good. I do good things. I break stick when mad. He's very caveman-esque, but Tyler Seguin is the Flash, the circumstance,
like the Hulk.
Really, that's what, for all intents and purposes, that's kind of what he turned in. He went Hulk smash, and it just so happened to be on Mark Stone's head and neck and multiple times. But
it's just unfortunate that's
he shouldn't have been laying there.
That.
Yeah.
How many? Just out of curiosity, when you guys fall down, how often do you fall down like that?
Only when I'm carrying a stick.
Fell the other day, and I was like, "Damn it!"
Yeah,
and it was just unfortunate that another human being happened.
Yeah, it's really the ground's fault, and so at that point, I'm just punching the ground.
Did you know it was slick?
Yeah.
The ice.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, he could have killed himself out there when
Yeah.
he fell down. So thank God Mark Stone was underneath him with the stick,
Yeah.
and he was able to absorb all that.
The real MVP. But yeah, overall, I think it's an unfortunate situation for Sagan because he's just not the player that he once was. I don't think he ever can be again because of age, because of injury.
Can neither one of you guys think of a player at 32 who had been that kind of player? Because 32 is not ancient.
No.
But was able to sort of move a little bit in a different direction to make himself still a really good contributor. Not a point a game, but maybe 62 and 82. Because if Sagan did 62 or 65 and 82, you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. Can you think of anybody who did that after 30 when it looked like this guy's done, and then he managed to find it again?
Off the top of my head, no. I can't.
You think of anybody?
I'm a
the
homer.
only one I think of is because the heart and soul of the morning skate. He's a New York Rangers guy, and he's gonna be irate when he hears me say this. But we've talked about it a number of times. And this is not the level of a superstar by any means. But do you remember Jimmy Vesey was a very highly ranked offensive player, and he flamed out in that whole horrible situation up in Toronto where they made him the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And he has reinvented himself in a bottom six grinder with the Rangers. And he had a good season in that role. So that's the only player I can really think of. I mean, you could say like Doug Gilmour back in the day when he went up to Toronto.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Doug Gilmour was and Wendell Clark toned it down back then, too. He had to. Billy Guerin reinvented himself a little bit, when he in his later years in Pittsburgh, but
totally did.
And those are the guys I think of.
But Bill, and I was fortunate enough to cover Bill when he was here, and I really
we bring him up almost every podcast.
Oh, he's great. Just the nicest guy. But that was Bill is built a lot differently when he was playing than Tyler.
Yeah.
Tyler's just not, and Tyler's not going to add a bunch of weight. Bill could do those things, was graced physically to be able to play that kind of game as he got older. And I don't know, Tyler's not, 5'3", 130 pounds, but he's never played that. And I'm trying to think of guys who have adapted and started to play the game. And this is not a dumb player, right? He's really not. And he made some plays that didn't end up in the score sheet that were positive plays. Again, it wasn't like some liability. He just didn't make plays. And that's the challenge of we're paying you, brother, to make some plays, not just to your forte. And the reason we're paying you $9.5 million is, he didn't screw up. Okay.
Yeah,
That's great.
So it's filling the puck, filling the net with pucks. Yeah,
absolutely. Do something and set guys up, be positive. Ice time, in the other team's offensive zone, all that stuff. And he just wasn't doing it. He just didn't make any mistakes, which is great. And he's a good pro and all those, intangibles. But for $9.5 million, that's why Gallardi's saying it. And that's the part that I know we talked about that before, but I'm like, well, they're stuck with him. They're not going to buy him out. They'll buy out Suter, because I think impulsively, I think even Gallardi would do that. They're not going to buy out Tyler Sagan. They're not. So now you're like, okay, how can we make the best of this? And he's a good pro. He's a good guy. He's a good pro. Like, okay, what's your game plan now? Because that is not good enough. And you know that. You're going to be here for a while. So what are we going to do to make this better? And I'm like, okay, well, because Madonna didn't really do it. And I'm trying, is there somebody out there? And maybe, you mentioned those older guys, Wendell Clark and Alex Gilmour, those guys. I can't speak to it, but he's going to have to do something. Yeah. Otherwise, come January, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really a shame at the end of the day, because I don't think it's a team issue. I think it's a league issue that and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not as knowledgeable outside of the sport of hockey, but is the NHL the only sport where you cannot restructure a contract once it's signed?
Oh no, you can restructure NFL contracts all day. They do it all day.
So NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA.
No. Baseball, you're really hemmed in. Basketball, no. The NBA, I don't think you really can. NBA, an NFL contract, those guys will, because they'll make mistakes all the time. So then
Right.
you'll say, well, the Patriots restructured the contract of the punter. Like, dude, what? Like, how bad have you screwed up your cap when you were structuring contracts of the punter?
Yeah.
And it happens. They extend them out for another year or do whatever. That's why Dak Prescott's going to get $1 billion here sometime this year, early next year.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll do this all the time. But the NHL, it's what it is, and they had to do it. And I unfortunately back then when I was covering the lockout, I was younger and I was dumb and I believed everything the league was telling me, and then I quickly learned they were lying to all of us. They were terrible. Oh my God, I was just I bought on. Yeah, right. You need a salary cap. What the league really needed more than a cap was a floor. NFL teams
Right.
don't need to worry about floors. NHL teams, you needed a floor, especially back then, because there were certain teams. I remember a team executive telling me this. There were a handful of teams that did not have enough money to get to the floor. You got to remember that was back before the league had a national TV contract, because it had
They were relying on
ESPN.
ticket sales.
Yeah, they were just and regional sports networks, but nationally they didn't have it. And it wasn't until and then the explosion of cable television and streaming, and then Gary got the national TV deal with NBC that helped for a while. They got back on ESPN. TNT gets into it. So but you needed that floor more than anything else, and the players knew it, and they did get it. And so that's there were going to be problems with it. We didn't know how they were going to manifest themselves, and now it's what we're talking about here. You've given Seguin. Oh, I lost you.
No, I'm still here.
No, we're here. Oh, do we lose him?
Not sure. Just gonna keep it kosher and light. Keep rolling, I guess.
107.
4 and 5 year deals too.
There we go.
But you have to give them 8, 9, or 10. Like, what was the one? Who was the New Jersey Devils player? They gave like a 12-year deal to, and then he went back to Russia. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Who was that guy? He's really good, but they gave him like an insanely long contract, and then 4 or 5 years into the deal, he wanted to go home to Russia, and so that kind of bailed him out. It wasn't only whoever it was. It's gonna drive me crazy. Think who was that guy? He's on the Devils like in 7 or 8. Anyways, it doesn't matter. And that this is the part.
Chuck, Ilya
Kovalchuk. There you go.
Yeah,
nice.
right. And so this is the bad part and the new reality of the NHL with a hard cap, which is, okay, you're going to go long and you're going to end up having to live with bad deals for about 2 to 3 years. And that's where the Stars are, at least with Seguin. Maybe not Ben, but for sure Seguin.
And I'm pretty sure they have both. And this is where I get frustrated with Jim Nill personally. I've only got a couple more questions, so we won't keep you for too much longer. But this is where I get frustrated with Jim Nill, is he is just notorious for no move clauses. And I believe Ben, Seguin, Suter, they all have no move clauses. So
don't you think you can put
because of his age, though?
But
So I don't know if
don't
they gave him that one.
Yeah.
If you're not playing a guy, they'll waive that no move. They'll waive it.
Because in my mind, I'm looking at this opportunity because one move that got slept on, because you were talking about that cap floor, and I'm not saying it got slept on because anything came of it, was Ben Bishop was traded to the Buffalo Sabres in the offseason last year because we needed to get rid of his contract.
Yep.
They needed to hit the cap floor. I look at a guy like Ben or Seguin and say, hey, Anaheim, they're not going to hit the cap floor again next year, probably, give or take, unless they get crazy in the offseason, which is highly probable. But we're going to trade you. We need you to take this trade. Seguin, you just don't have it anymore. We need you to go to Anaheim. You're going to do great there. You love the sun. You love to show off your abs. Go to the beach. And that's the only way in my mind I can see either one of those guys moving. Ben, it's not going to happen. He's the captain. I as much as we may not care for it, he's going to be the captain next season. Yeah. Seguin, though, $9.85 million. If we can convince him to go, that's a guy you can realistically, literally afford to lose. Then you just have $9.8 million, assuming that they take it all. But
that takes, the Bishop thing was such an outlier.
Yeah.
I mean, that situation was so random and uncommon and genuinely unfortunate, not fake unfortunate, really unfortunate.
Right.
And, what are the odds that Seguin situation is going to work out the way the Bishop thing did, because you're right. They only took him on knowing that he wasn't going to take up a roster spot.
Right.
Like, we just need $5 million on the books so we can be at the whatever the minimum
monopoly
is.
money.
Yeah, right. And I can't. If they get rid of Sagan, I mean, it'll be a dump. But you're gonna need some moving parts there, and you're gonna need an assistant GM or an assistant coach who likes him.
Yeah.
Which, he's a likable guy. That's not going to be. He's not the same guy who left Boston. He's not. He's got a good reputation. He's a good.
He plays 200 feet now. I mean, I've noticed that in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
and he goes to team breakfasts all the time.
Yeah. So but I mean, it's a good line. But he's not going to be a problem.
No.
So you're going to take this guy and you're like,
he's engaged now. So that helps.
Well, can you imagine that?
Sealed in stone. Yeah.
Yeah. But still, like, I could go on a different tangent there. I just think you're going to need a lot of luck.
And it's going to be a third party to eat some of that cash. Maybe Arizona involved.
Maybe somebody. And usually those things happen, and nobody predicts it accurately. It just sort of happens out of thin air. But they might. But I just get this weird feeling. I think he's going to be back for another go. I'm not.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's told me that. I don't want to act like I'm smarter than I am. I'm not. I just get the feeling they like this guy. And the one thing I really missed covering when I was really young covering professional sports, the one thing I really, really missed was how much office politics and someone liking you matters in getting a job. It does. It can be. Pro sports is all about wins and points and production. It's also about, does somebody like you? Just are you doing somebody a favor? It's not nepotism. And there's and it can be very passive aggressive.
Right.
These are all things that are just like were lost on me when I first started. Now the more I've done it, I'm like, oh my God, that's really, they wouldn't even fucking tell him. No, because the GM didn't want to be a bad guy. I'm not talking about Jim Mill, but I've heard stories like this. You're like, are you crazy? They're paying the GM $2 million and he won't even go fucking tell the guy to his face. No, because he doesn't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck you. Why are you doing the job?
You see it all over the country.
I was going to say, now that we
want to be the bad guy.
Yeah. Now that we have social media, there's so many stories of, my dad found out on Twitter and he sent me a text. I'm like, what?
And in fairness to that, because I remember I did that one time. I found out. No, I did. I found out the team president called me and said, would you please not do this? And I said, I have to.
I've got a job to do.
As I did. And he understood. He wasn't mad at me. He said, we can't. The Stars had traded Daryl Sutter. How do you pronounce his name?
Oh, Daryl Sador.
Sador, yeah. I got the Sutter brothers confused. They had traded him, and I found out. I'd written it. And the president was like, can you please not write this? We haven't been able to tell him yet. And that does happen from time to time. A lot of times they're trying, but word gets out, an agent, a friend, something, and it's not that does happen. And and you feel bad. You're like, oh man, I'm sorry. And I'm the guy's number, so I couldn't call him. And you're like, well, okay, he'll get over it. They're paying him $4 million a year. Give me those problems.
Yeah.
But those things happen. The ones that I just can't stand is, here, you go tell them. Mm-hmm. And that happens more than you think.
Yeah. Well, I personally want to say thank you for sharing all the stories and the time with us.
We could go for hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brownie's got some lightning round questions. These are very lighthearted.
I want to hear this.
I do have one more Stars related question. Also, Ben Bishop going to be an employee of the Stars next season. He wasn't one this season, wink, wink, because he was with the Sabres. But as someone who has been around the Dallas sports scene now for 20 plus years, obviously following the Stars pretty closely throughout that time, for me, this is probably, if I had to rank them, the third most exciting season in Stars history. Where does it rank for you? Because obviously we have the Stanley Cup run. We have the Stanley Cup win. We had another Stanley Cup run immediately after 1999 that we lost to, I believe, New Jersey. But where does this kind of stand for you overall in this season?
I have this was a great one. It really was. You get to Game 6 of the West Finals.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. The regular season was really good. You had a lot of individual great performances. And I know we kind of killed Jamie Benn. Jamie Benn had a really good year.
Oh yeah,
He did.
I mean, we
Still one
I
of my
wrote about
favorite
this
players.
a couple of weeks ago.
He really
Yeah, he's everything you'd want. Like if you were going to buy a jersey for your kid, you wouldn't worry about that jersey being embarrassed. Although he kind of did it, but at least he did it on the ice. This is the bubble thing. You don't want to say it doesn't count. They counted because
It was a different situation. You're right.
Was.
Yeah,
I mean,
we all needed it too during that time.
Yeah.
Totally. But it's funny. I think back about it. Yeah, it was kind of how much fun it was to watch. Like you could watch 3 games from 12 until 10.
It's fantastic.
And it's not like we had anything else going on, so it was
you didn't feel guilty.
Yeah.
And watching NBA playoffs in the bubble and NFL games on Wednesday at 5.
Yeah.
And it was all in college games where it was a mess.
Yeah.
And the one thing I loved about the college season is that it proved to every fan what we all knew forever, which was, you fucking liars, you do not need 10 years to schedule a game in advance. You could literally do it next week.
Yep.
And you don't, because you're a bunch of cowards and you're married to this flawed system because it pays you 7 figures.
Yep.
And I think, for me, 99 was magic.
Absolutely.
2000 was amazing. Back to back, I think now I can appreciate just the enormity and how special it was. The Stars won back to back Game 7 in the conference finals against the same franchise.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
We talk about things that might not ever happen again. I know it'll never happen again. We always say that, right? Sun's never going to come up again. Well, yes, it will, you idiot.
Yeah.
All the averages. But it was magic. And you look back at all those names, and there's one of the things I loved about the 30 for 30 they did on the Detroit Colorado rivalry.
Oh, so good.
Oh, it was amazing. They got all those guys to talk. And I think about the Dallas series with Colorado, with Sakic and Neuendijk and Madonna and Belfour and Waugh, at Forsberg, and just Deadmarsh, Adam Foote. And it was just so much intensity. Mike Keane scoring 2 goals in the 7th game. Mike fucking Keane.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. Of all people, yeah.
Of all people,
Yeah.
Bob Gainey, Ken Hitchcock, all these guys that were just bigger than life. And it mattered so much. And the ice was shit because they didn't know how to make the ice properly back then. So they brought in all these air conditioners to try to get the humidity out of the Reunion Arena. And it was just slop, and it was awesome. That was magic. Watching, I'll never forget when Dallas forced Game 6 against Jersey, and they played the marathon overtime game in New Jersey. And Mike Modano redirects a Brett Hull point shot past Brodeur, and they're going bananas, and they get it to Game 6. Or even my favorite was after Game 1 in Jersey, Ed Belfour gives up like 800 goals on 3 shots. He's terrible. And then the dumbass comes out in the locker room and says, "Yeah, I took cough syrup." I'm
the NyQuil game.
Yeah,
Yes.
he took cough syrup. Like that's what it was, and
something like that. Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, he said he took NyQuil,
Yeah.
his cough syrup. And we're sitting around his locker, and I was too young to know. I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." And
I hope you feel
I'm
better.
like, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, "Oh, you poor guy." Instead, I'm like, and this was before I was too dumb to know. I'm like, "You dumbass! You just got an excuse. You got embarrassed." Like, yeah, it was the classic dog ate my homework. So that was awesome. But the one, and I'm biased because it's still one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen by a player. I still marvel at it. Dallas played San Jose. I think it was in the Western Conference Finals, or no, semifinals. It was like a marathon overtime.
Oh, 6 overtime game. Was it Brendan Morrow scored the game winner? Yeah.
I've never seen a forward overpower 5 other skaters the way Morrow did that game. And it was every shift. Every shift he came out, and he was killing everybody. You could tell that was a player who was in the prime of his career, who was on it that night. Remember, Brendan didn't have the greatest hands.
No.
He wasn't a shootout guy by any stretch of the imagination. But in that game, I've never seen a forward overpower defenseman. It didn't matter what line San Jose ran out against him. He just fucked all of them. and they couldn't deal with him.
Yeah.
They had Frank, they have a nickname for that game, the Memorial Marathon, whatever. I don't know. To me, and I know the Stars didn't win the Stanley Cup that year, and this was amazing. This was a lot of fun. There were so many intense moments. Like that Dumba game was great. And I called for Marchman or somebody to go after him, and I got labeled all kinds of names. I'm like, well, you and then whenever they see him in the regular season, that should be the first thing that somebody does.
Absolutely.
Right away.
That's why I pray Domi's on this team next season, because he, like a Wolverine.
He's the one guy who would do it.
Yeah.
Maybe Jamie Benn.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that motherfucker deserves it. And they're like, oh, it's a clean head mind.
He got so worked up, we lost him for a second.
Yeah. Okay. But to me, of all those different runs and moments that I look at, and Kiwi Rancho will never get as much credit for that hat trick playoff game because it was in front of no fans.
Right.
Man, that Morrow game still blows me away.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It just, there was such a, and even though I'm a member of the media and I'm cynical and jaded and all the other stuff, the fan in me, even if you knew nothing about hockey, you would watch that guy and you're like, oh my God. Because, hockey a lot of times is about, man, I noticed that guy.
Yeah.
Like that guy's around it a lot.
Yeah.
He's not scoring, but he's around it. He's creating chances. He's a positive. The puck's always in the other end. It's where it should be, not in front of your goalie. And that night he was spectacular.
That's the will over skill argument right there.
Absolutely. And it was ultimately, it's why you loved him, and it was why his game wasn't going to age well, because it hits, take their toll.
It builds up over time. Yeah,
it does. And that was the knock and the fear on Jamie Benn. But, he beat back Father Time and all that with 78 points this year. But that's the one. Yeah, that's the one I still look back at, because I covered as a beat writer that Anaheim series when
you were in it too. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, that Morrow thing always blew me away. It was a great game. And it was so intense. So when I sit there and think about it, that's the one for me that means, and I knew him, and he's a great guy. And it's not like we're drinking buddies, but you get to know some of these guys a little bit and you like them. And that's the one I'm like, motherfucker, that's a man.
That's the one.
That's the one. Yeah. I love that.
Awesome.
One.
That's awesome.
Well, I appreciate all of the Stars answers. I know a lot of people are going to really enjoy this, but
it's awesome. I know we don't talk about
great.
Stars enough.
Yeah. Even though not for lack of effort, but anyway.
Tries. Oh yeah, let me hit you with the lightning round. All right.
Okay.
Favorite cartoon character?
Daffy Duck.
Outside of Dallas, favorite and least favorite NHL rinks to visit? We could say cities, maybe not rinks.
No, go with rinks. Because I'm a big sports venue bucket guy.
Oh, that's right. Like the book about Texas Stadium, right?
Yeah. Edmonton on a Saturday night is awesome.
Nice.
Now, I was going to the old place, the one with the old place on the outskirts of town. That's where I went. I think it was called, I don't know what the name of it was. It was a dump. I love those places because the ceilings were low and they had limited number of suites. And man, when the Oilers were good, or they had a good night, or they pulled an upset or whatever else, that play you could feel sound.
Yeah.
Vancouver, not as much. Montreal is neat. The Saddle Dome is cool because where they would put you, and I'm naming all these Canadian. Joe Louis Arena was just a rat hole. Like literally rats. You would see they're watching the game, and it'd be a bunch of rats smoking cigarettes, watching hockey. That's how bad that building was. All the San Jose one was cool. The Shark Tank was neat.
Tank. Yeah.
Obviously I haven't had a chance to visit the new one in Detroit, but people have asked me if I'm a hockey fan, where should I go? Edmonton on a Saturday night, brother, that's hard to beat. That one's pretty good. Yeah. If you get a chance, and I don't know if you guys get a chance, because it's so far, it's just so fucking far away. But Edmonton and a playoff game, I highly recommend it. That's pretty neat.
Your go-to pizza topping?
Does extra cheese count?
That counts.
Absolutely.
No, that's weak. No, it is. It's like I sound like a 3-year-old. Can I have cheese pizza? Probably sausage.
Okay.
regular size.
So for the rest of your life, whenever you walk into any room, what's your entrance music?
That's a good one.
I like the you can see the
I know.
clock. The
'Cause I'm
clock is
going to
ticking.
all
You're
these-
going.
All these shitty 80s hair bands.
Hey, that's good.
You know how sometimes you listen to a song, let's say if it's Monday, and you find that song and it's new, and you listen to it so much that by the time you turn it on Tuesday morning, you're already sick of it.
Yeah.
Now there's very few songs that you can't outplay it, that you still love it. If I had an entry song, probably Thunderstruck by
Awesome.
AC/DC.
Classic.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that one. I was going to say Welcome to the Jungle. The problem is that Welcome to the Jungle, it takes such a dramatic dive after the intro. Now the intro is amazing, but Thunderstruck, that's a long one.
And it
So
goes
that
the
would
whole way.
allow me a long time.
Yeah, you
to
can walk
in.
slow. Yeah.
You can do the Corey Perry walk. Yeah. What's a skill you don't possess but you would love to have?
Oh, that's a good one.
We're getting deep.
Well, because there's so many. I'm so bad at so many things. I don't know. Most people would say writing. That's a good one. Yeah. Okay. Here's one. I like to play basketball. As you can see, I did my undergrad at Kansas.
Nice.
I grew up in Indiana. I'm 49. I played basketball, a lot of 20-year-olds, and I take a lot of pride that I can run with them.
Yeah.
Yep. And I've been out there playing for like 15 years, and I still suck. I do. It's amazing how bad I am.
It takes a lot to admit that.
No, it's nothing. I'm luckily at that age in my life where I'm like, yeah, I'm awful.
Yeah.
And it's no, and I'll sit there and be like, if I had to assess someone said, give me a scouting report on yourself. I'm like, you would totally want me on your team. You would. And the thing I would drive you crazy, like, oh my God, he's wide open under the rim. Everybody else, all 9 other players are on the other side of the court. And I would miss it. I would. I'll get rebounds, dive for loose balls. I'm the epitome of the scrappy white guy. I'm like so many parts of those 80s Celtics teams, but the difference is I suck. And so when you're like, what would you like to be really good at? Like the other day, I went out I was practicing 3-pointers, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make 10 3-pointers, and then I'm going to work out 10. I swear to God, I was there for like a fucking week. They were like closing the building down, and I couldn't make 10. I'm like, how am I? And I was watching this interview Joel Embiid did. Like, how did you become a good 3-point shooter? He's like, I watched Instagram reels of white guys shooting 3-pointers. I did that, and I still missed. And Joel Embiid went to Kansas, and it didn't work out. So that's the one. There's a million other ones, but that's just off the top of my head.
That's
I wish I was a little bit better.
What's your best, worst interview / athlete interaction? We had a reporter on a while back, and he told a story about an old-time Bruins player who had him up against the wall about something.
Nobody ever did that to me. Nobody ever did. I remember one time. Do you remember the goalie Ron Tugnut?
Oh yeah. He one night made like 65 saves against the Bruins.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, he was with Pittsburgh, and he went. Yeah, he had a couple of runs. I mean, he was in Columbus for a little while. Nicest guy ever. So there was I was covering the team, and got to think back about when I was younger, just how bad I was. And you could probably make an argument that I was pretty bad yesterday too. But back then I was so young, and covering hockey when you're young is great because the people are so patient and they're so nice. And, I talked to guys too long, and, I was just young. Anyways, so Ron Tugnut, Marty Turco was in the midst of a great year, and then he sprains his ankle. And Marty was the nicest guy ever, just a terrific guy.
Yeah, thinking of it. Yep.
Yeah, he's great. So then Tugnut is the backup, and he's bad that night. Bad. And I think he'd had like a bad few games. And so this is one thing I didn't know. Players will sit there and lie to you and say, yeah, we don't read it. We don't read it and we don't watch it. I'm relying, all of them.
Oh, I think we lost
me. Reading that is, shoot, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm back. So one lesson I learned was if a player tells you we don't read what you all write, or we don't watch it, they're all lying, all of them. And anybody would. It's a human nature thing. Like you want to know what people are saying about
Yeah.
you. All of them do it. All of them. Because I would hear stories. I would hear stories. Ken Griffey, when he was at the Reds, would sit in the locker room, the clubhouse, and just scroll stories about himself because guys were killing him. And that's not uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
They're human. A lot of them are terribly, deeply insecure and afraid because they're human beings.
Yeah.
So I'm covering Tugnut, and he's a great guy. He's a really nice guy, and he had a bad couple games, and whatever I wrote wasn't even that critical. So he sits me down. Remember, I'm young, and I'm a little scared. And he says, I don't have a problem with you writing that I was horse shit. He said, why don't you write in there that everybody else in front of me was horse shit? And I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times with hockey, especially young people like that, we got so focused in on the goalie, we missed the fact that the defenseman was half asleep, or the forwards are just fucking
or
mailing
bad change or whatever. Yeah.
Any of it. And they've left this guy hung out to dry. Now, sometimes he was bad. Like,
Right.
dude, how are you letting that in?
Yeah.
And then other times, like, what are you doing? Because you're not playing hockey.
Yeah.
And he was nice about it. He wasn't mean about it. I remember this. There's one story. Remember Juan Gonzalez? Gonzalez.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God,
American
yes.
League MVP.
Yeah, I was going to say, baseball player, yeah.
Mullet / Jerry curl hairstyle.
You might hear?
Yep.
Okay. So the Texas Rangers had traded Juan and to Detroit. He's there for a few years, and then they bring him back in 2002 when he's basically done. So he hurts his hand early in the season. And somebody calls me and says, I think he hurt it when he took his helmet and he slammed it into the helmet rack. Okay, seems legitimate. So I go up to Juan, quite sheepishly, I might add. It's happened. Snaps at me. Don't ever talk to me again.
Today or ever?
Yeah.
Or?
We talking? Yeah, we like the next couple of hours because I'm down.
Yeah.
So the PR guy comes out. He's a Bostonian, just coincidentally. Comes. He says, "Mac, what did you say to him?" I said, "I just said this." So Juan was on the disabled list. So disabled list guys typically don't talk to the media.
Right.
Juan was kind of a peculiar cat. So I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh no. And he made a scene. And he's in the corner of the club, and I'm like, and so he made a scene. And I'm like, this guy's never going to talk to me again. So I'm worried about this.
Yeah.
So then then he comes off the disabled list, and I think he plays like a week. And then he hurts his back. And at that time, he had not talked to me because he hadn't done anything. And this is when our staffs were much bigger, and somebody else knew him much better than I did, who I worked with. He talked to him, but now he gets put on the disabled list. Major League Baseball used to have a 60-day disabled list.
Yeah.
So he hurts his back. And normally, if you're on the 60-day, you're out for the year. And by that point, it's the end of May. The season's going to the tank. The Rangers are terrible. It was A-Rod's second year. The team was bad. And so they put him on the 60-day DL. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I don't have to talk to him. So then there was that one. And the other one that I had was, I don't think I've ever shared this story.
Well, that's why we're here.
Exclusive.
I'm overselling it without lead in. So I was covering the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys had a defensive back who was a great talker, but he was an asshole. But he was a great talker, and if you could get through and deal with that part, he was great. You just had to deal with how crusty he could be and kind of condescending, but he was a great talker. His name was Orlando Scandrick. And Orlando was a guy like
Yeah.
So Orlando
Unfortunately,
Yeah, but he was an okay player, but he carried this chip on his shoulder, and he could be kind of a dick. And so he came up to me one time, And this is like 10 seconds, and I'm not talking 10. Locker room is packed, media members, and I get a text message that is horrible news. I can't get into what it was.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was terrible news. And then he starts yelling at me from across the locker room, calling me out. And I am not in the mood. Like I'm looking at my phone and I'm reading this just devastating message.
Yeah.
And then he's yelling at me about something that I allegedly said or didn't say or whatever else. And I start yelling back at him. That's how, now you know, you get older and there's like, I can't believe I did that. Or
yeah.
That was kind of an out of body experience for me because it was so out of character for me to sit there. But it wouldn't have mattered. It could have been the King of England. It could have been the president. It could have been Jesus Christ. I was not in that place to be pushed in that moment for any reason. I mean, anybody, if I had told you what did you just read, you'd be like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just overwhelming stress and sadness. And so it does, especially now with text messages, you can find out your whole life in real time. So I snapped at him. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this bullshit or whatever it is I said. And I was hot.
Yeah.
And I stormed out. And then I ended up having a confrontation with somebody about it later. And Orlando didn't care. He just mouthed off. He was trying to embarrass me. And what I come to learn is locker room is all about alpha male, trying to intimidate people. And you do have to, I learned it covering Bill, you have to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you do it, because I had those moments. I remember one time Bill Parcells, I love this. I was covering Bill and I was asking a question. This was Tony Romo's first year as a starting quarterback. Remember that first year he came off the bench and they took the world by storm. Oh my God, Tony's amazing. So the Cowboys had a first-round draft pick named Bobby Carpenter. And Bobby wasn't playing a lot because we were figuring out maybe Bill didn't like him. So sometimes he'd start, sometimes he didn't. So I asked the question, is Bobby going to start this week? And Bill looks at me and says, it really doesn't matter who starts. You know, they all say you guys, which is that, sort of giant blanket for the media members, right? And Bill says, you guys make a big deal. It doesn't matter who starts. And I said, yeah, you mean like Romo? And he says, yeah, like Romo. Yeah, it was a good line. And I couldn't believe I said it. That was like, I cannot believe it.
Like, who said that? Oh,
yeah, that's exactly like, yeah. So that was one. And there was another one that was fun. Terrell Owens was with the team, and I hated covering Terrell because he was a pain in the ass. And
no way.
He was just drama queen. So the deal was, I've talked way too long, but the deal was, so Bill Parcells would give you a half an hour on the dot. The guy had the most amazing clock in his head. He would give you 30 minutes, not an hour, half an hour on the dot. Sits down at 10, you better at 10 because he's starting at 10. Right to 10:30. Bye. And then he would walk off with some of the writers and take some of the questions and walk down the hallway and was gone. So then he would talk on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then 10 minutes on Friday. So on Monday he talks, and I think the Cowboys might have been in a bit of a downslide. I don't remember. Yeah. And then Wednesday, Terrell Owens talks. And Terrell would say every combination of words in the English language. And so he says, I don't listen to what he says, talking about Bill Parcells. I don't listen to what he says. I don't pay attention to it. Something to that effect. So I'm like, oh, crap. So then on Thursday, we go talk to Bill. Nobody asks him about Terrell Owens' comment. And I'm banking on this young female reporter asking it. Because if she asks it, in my mind, Bill won't jump her case.
And then you get the follow-up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or then we all win, right? Yeah. And the one thing that I've really prided myself on is that I'll ask anything. Now, I have fucked up so many questions. I finally got better at it. But I will ask anything. I'm like, me up. I won't make it be fine. But I'll ask anything. I'll be like, yeah, I'll take the sword. I'll do it. At least that's what I tell myself. Yeah. So nobody asks Bill Parcells about his star wide receiver, whom he does not like. He won't even call him by his name. He doesn't like him. He didn't want him. He didn't like him. He's just dealing with him. So nobody asks on Thursday, hey, Bill, what do you think about your star wide receiver saying he doesn't listen to you? I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So on Friday, which is the 10-minute session, and you never know with Bill, he might, especially on Friday, because it's 2 hours away from 2 days away from game day, might be kind of prickly. And I said, Bill, and you can find the clip on YouTube. It's funny. And you can kind of hear me in the background. I said, Bill, coach, blah, 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 Terrell. And you could tell I was nervous about saying it. And he said, and he's giving me this long face. I'm like, oh, this is not good. And he says, he hears everything I say and he sucks you guys. So he said, so consider yourself sucked.
God, that's just,
that was gold.
Yeah.
And I kind of laugh.
Whoa,
and the whole room kind of laughs, and he's irritated. God. This is an important time of the year, getting ramped up the playoffs, because he was irritated. He was kind of laughing at first that he said, consider yourself sucked. I don't think he thought he was going to say that. And then he was irritated. Like, I don't like talking about this guy.
Yeah.
And then it kind of ended. But that's
hilarious.
That's probably, now you say that, that's probably the one that
that's great.
I've milked most of the stories out of. I'm sure I've had other ones, but
I just got
that's a good one.
Two more for you, quick ones.
Okay.
Pancakes or waffles?
Yes.
Oh, good answer.
That's the best answer we've ever gotten.
Yeah.
And then the last one, you've not talked about a lot of these people. Now, I'm not asking you to call anybody. Most famous person in your phone that you feel comfortable sharing.
No, it's fine.
Probably share.
No, it's a weird, because I was at a dinner party, whatever, the other night, and someone was telling a story about somebody famous that they had dinner with, just sort of coincidentally.
Yeah.
And I went around the room and I said, oh, this is a good one. Who's the most famous person that you've had a chance to really, talk to and spend a little bit of time with? And for me, it's different because, guys, more often than not, they don't care who I am.
Yeah.
I'm just a media outlet. I could be, it doesn't matter. And, it's transactional. It's 15 minutes. They're promoting their product. And okay, thanks a lot. Good luck. And especially in the entertainment world.
Mm-hmm.
I have Vince Gill's phone number. That's a good one.
There you go.
But would I call it? So I'll give you an example. Like, the documentary filmmaker Ken Burns?
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I have a buddy whose brother works with him. Yeah.
Okay, so because he's up in the Northeast. He lives in Vermont or New Hampshire?
Vermont now. It used to be New Hampshire, I believe.
Okay.
Yep.
So I interviewed him. He was doing a documentary. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it, on Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really good. It's really, really good. So I reached out to PBS. And what I've decided as I've gotten older in my career is, like, if there's somebody interesting I want to try to interview, I'm going to see if I can get them.
Right.
So whomever, sports, politics, entertainment, whatever else, maybe I'll get lucky. And so Ken Burns had been on the list. He calls me from his cell phone. And now more than ever, caller ID, he doesn't block his number. It's happened more and more. And Ken Burns' number comes up. I'm like, oh, great. I've got Ken Burns' number. And what I've really learned is you do not use those numbers unless you need it.
Right.
Because you just don't. So I started a podcast 16 months ago. It was a great interview. He was a delightful man. He was wonderful. And it was great. And I've had a few of those. And I'm like, so I started a podcast. I'm like, I'll go through my phone and see what I can get.
Right.
All right. Like, I got the author, Sebastian Junger. He wrote The Perfect Storm. He's a terrific guy. He's a fascinating interview. A handful of guys. So I thought, I'll try Ken Burns. Because when this company was thinking about hiring me, they're like, you can get Ken Burns. And I'm like, just because I have his number doesn't mean I'm going to get it. That doesn't mean anything. So, and I'm very mindful, because I used to do radio for a little bit. And when people ask me to come on, everybody needs help and needs content. And so I'm very mindful and flattered you guys asked me. Anybody
That was awesome.
Oh, thank you. And so I texted Ken Burns. I figured, this guy's a PBS guy. If anybody understands the whole, small guy trying to make a way of it, it would be Ken Burns.
Especially a documentary filmmaker as well.
Hands down. And who's made a career in PBS, who lives the mission. I'll give it a try. Next day, I get an email from PBS that says, do not contact Mr. Burns directly. Go through us. I didn't take it personally.
Yeah.
I was like, I totally get it. He's very busy. Ken Burns, Bob Costas will be on. I love the. This is one. Gives me a chance to talk about myself. So when I was a kid growing up, Bob Costas was my professional hero. He really was. Yep. I thought he was just the best. So he was doing his HBO show a couple of years ago, and I reached out to HBO. I said, "Hey, could I talk to him?" They said, "Yeah, sure." So we talked for 20 minutes. And he was great. It meant so much to me personally, and I ran the interview just as a Q&A. And one very valuable lesson I learned is that before you interview somebody, if you're sincere and genuine, you thank them and you're nice and you're kind and you tell them how much you respect their work, they're going to be nicer.
Right.
They are. It's human nature. And so thank him. It's great. The article runs. I'm in Montana, and I have no cell service, none, for like a week. It's great. So I come back in, I see I've got a message from area code 314. I'm like, that's probably my sister-in-law. And then I'm sitting there, and I listen to the message. My wife and daughter sitting across from me. I listen to the message, and it's Bob Costas, and he has read it, and he's thanking me. And I even, I'm nobody, and for him to have read it, and it was a nice thing. That meant so much to me as a guy. And I've got the number. I haven't used it, but the one that I look back on, and he's no longer with us, is probably. Do you remember Ken Starr? Does that name mean anything to you?
The investigative, right? Didn't he? Yeah.
That was him. So he was the one who went after, right?
Yeah.
So I got to know him. He eventually became the Baylor University president, but I knew him when I was a kid as the guy who went after Clinton for the Lewinsky scandal and for Whitewater. And
Whitewater, so I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, and this is an exceptionally bright man, exceptionally bright, very savvy, very media savvy, and I got to know him. And
that's great.
We spent some time together, and not everybody liked him, but you see. Sometimes, not all the time, you do get to see people what they're like off camera or when they're away from a microphone and what he was really like. And he was a politician to the core. If you get to be Solicitor General, you're a politician. And if you get to be that, he was one step away from being the pick for the Supreme Court Justice. And Bush Sr. didn't go with him. He went with David Souter. And that changed the country because David Souter turned out to be very much a liberal. And Ken Starr would never have done that. But I got to know him, and I was really sad when he died because he was one of those people that we always talked about getting together, and we just never did it. And one morning I wake up and I find out he had cancer and he passed. But so when you sit there, and this is a chance to sit here and say, "Whoa, look, I know famous people." They probably claim they don't know me, but probably those. I would probably say,
awesome.
Yeah, the Ken Starr one, that was kind of surreal because I remember one time I was interviewing him in a public forum. And he knew who I was, and that scared the shit out of me. No, it did. And I was prepared. I did the job. It was professional. But I'm like, oh my God, this guy knows who I am. And that was a good life experience.
It's amazing how you handle this. So as a Bruins fan, I got to interview Bobby Carpenter when I first joined the morning skate. Okay. And he was always my favorite player. And
how was he?
Oh, he was awesome. We talked for like 2.5 hours. It was unbelievable. And I just reached out to the Bruins alumni, and they were like, "Who would you like?" And I was like, "Well, my favorite player was Bobby Carpenter." She goes, "Well, expect a call." He calls me like within the day, and I literally go, "Holy shit, it's Bobby fucking Carpenter!" And he just started laughing. But then, fast forward, he comes on the podcast. We've texted a few times about his daughter coming on. She's very accomplished in the women's game. And there was one night we're at Beer League. It's called Beer League for a reason. You're in the parking lot afterwards. They were starting up a summer league, and it's open levels. And he lives like within 10 minutes of the rink. I don't know why, but I thought it was a good idea to shoot him a text to see if he was interested. And half the guys in the parking lot are like, "Yeah, Brownie, do it," and the other half are like, "No." And I'm like, "No, we had a good rapport." So I sent him a text. No, it wasn't that late because it was like an 8 o'clock game, so it wasn't
That's
that
all right.
bad. But I sent him a text similar like to Ken Burns, and he texted me back. He was like, "I really appreciate the offer, but I'm good." And I was like, "Oh, I was hoping to be your McSorley, you know, or something." And he was like, "I really appreciate it." Yeah, he couldn't
Yeah,
have
and
been nicer about it.
right. And like especially older guys like that, I've really seen this, and you've already noticed it. They really do like when somebody remembers them.
Yeah.
They do. They really appreciate it. Especially most of them do. Not some of them they're not built for the public eye.
Right.
It makes them uncomfortable. But most of them, especially he knew you were a well-meaning guy.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. You didn't do anything wrong. It was
He actually sent me an autographed. I had an old autographed picture of him, and I mailed it to him, and he re-autographed it. Yeah,
it's things like that.
Yeah.
And
such a stalker move.
No, but I mean, but as long as you recognize you tried, it didn't work out, you got on, that's fine. And if he's going to be nice, and that's cool. And as long as you don't, I totally understand that. And it's weird. Like I look at, I don't know if you can tell in my room here, I've got a bunch of junk, but one of the things that I've got, let me get it. I want to share this. Hang on.
All right.
Is this the awkward moment where I say I have Wayne Gretzky's number in my phone?
Do you really?
Yeah. I don't have the balls to call him.
So,
God.
So I was born in Cincinnati, and we moved when I was about 4 or 5. But I grew up a big Reds fan. I was a huge Pete Rose fan. So when Pete was banned for life, this is before I realized what a dirtbag Pete Rose is. He was. It's just white trash. But so I was a big Pete Rose fan. And so he was banned for life. I still vividly remember that. I'm like, oh no, my hero's fallen. And I'm like, your hero's a dirtbag who gambles on, Australian rules, kickball. And so I run into Pete one time in Vegas. It's like 96. It was 96. And you really don't want to meet your heroes sometimes.
Yeah.
He's there and he looks like shit. And it's like 9 o'clock. It's the MGM Grand. And I'm like, and I'm not really an autograph guy. I'm not. Just it's clutter. And I'm like, that's just me. Anyways, but this was different. So I'm like, I got to try. I'm like 22, 23. So I grab a parlay card at the MGM Grand. He's at the $25 table betting blackjack with a woman, his wife, and no judgment.
Yeah.
And I said, Mr. Rose, huge fan, and I'm shaking. This is before I was in graduate school at the time, and I am shaking. I said, would you please sign this? It would mean everything to me. So he signs it and he nods. Thank you so much. And he nods and that's it. So years later, I'm in a secondhand store and I find the Sports Illustrated where he admits the dialogue. Yeah. So I buy it. And this is the autograph.
Oh, the parlay. Perfect.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
That is sick.
So I totally. And this is the one, like it's little weird things like this. This is the stuff that
the
ironic, weirdo stuff.
But that's
I've got
no one else in the world has that combo.
Right. That's exactly right.
You know what I mean?
Like, this is mine. This is
it.
And sports geeks will appreciate the irony of it and the fact that this was my favorite player. And now I recognize fully that he's a piece of crap and he's no longer going to be in the Hall of Fame because he couldn't stop going to the tables and betting on kickball.
It's just even better that you ran into him. And it wasn't even a high-end casino. That's what makes it even better.
It was right when the MGM opened. So it was,
okay. All right. Fair enough.
I mean, I'm talking like first 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
You know how when the new hotels open, they're all ridiculously overpriced. Mm. Well, I'm in graduate school, and here's the best part. You're a Bostonian, you'll like this. So I bet like $50 for me at the time was like $5,000. Mm-mm. And at the time, there's a Thursday night college football game on ESPN, which is kind of a novelty. And Boston College is playing Pitt, and BC is an overwhelming favorite. I'm like, go BC. I go bet BC. Sure enough, Pitt beats them. And that was the year. Remember the year that they got a scandal? The BC football team, some of the BC football team players got busted for gambling.
Yeah.
It was that team. Now I don't think they got fixed for throwing games, but still, I was like, that's great. I put all of my money, and I had no money back then, on a team that gets in trouble for betting on games. But the salvage it was, I got my Pete Rose autograph and GM thing. Yes, so that's it. I did not mean to make your podcast.
No, dude,
that's fine.
This is great. Ked's gonna be so mad. It's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you for both of us. Fink, you're more than welcome to thank yourself.
No, I was flattered to do
it. You know, look for your columns. Fort Worth Star Telegram, just great. Your website. You want to promote the website?
Yeah, sure. I have a podcast called the Engel. I'll interview anybody from sports, politics, mostly sports, politics. The last one I had was a really good one. I interviewed Yogi Berra's granddaughter.
I saw that. I saw that.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Good. She's got a documentary out now about an amazing man, her granddad, Yogi Berra. So you can find that on YouTube. That's Engel. You can find all of my stuff on my website, macengel.com, macengel.com. Twitter, I'm MacEngelProf, Prof. People make fun of me about that. The truth story is, when I joined Twitter like in 2007, Mac Engel was already taken, and I didn't want to. I was like, and I just started teaching part-time. They call you professor.
You have a high rating in your professor profile. I don't know if you
ever
looked at it.
I know. I need to look back on that, because somebody's like, "Oh yeah, he's hot." I'm like, I need to show my wife that. She doesn't believe it. And so that's why I nicknamed myself Mac Engel Prof.
Perfect.
And I don't know. I'm sure there's a mug shot someplace. That's it. That's where you can find all my stuff and invest all of your time in.
Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I love these ones where we don't know how, we're on to talk about Jamie Benn, and then it was fantastic.
This has been a blast.
Oh, thank you. I'm really jealous. Do you have a Whataburger jersey back there?
Oh, I don't. I guess this is my turn to plug. I have a podcast called Wada Hockey. That's outstanding.
Yeah,
so we've been.
I'll have to find it.
Yeah, please do. We'll have you on, and we'll go for another 2 hours someday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very much. I'm going to go make dinner.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good enough time. Yeah.
Away from your daughter. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, fellas.
All right.
See you later.
Signing off for the morning skate. Thank you.